Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we have yet another build video. I'm really loving these build videos and I thought that I would take a look at the Mesmer Elite specialization for End of Dragons, the Virtuoso. I've been having a lot of fun with Virtuoso and I found myself playing my Virtuoso more than maybe the other elite specs, just for the sake of this playstyle that I am really falling into. Now, there are a couple builds with Virtuoso, as well as my previous video with Willbender, so there might be more videos for each of these elite specs as the days progress, as the balance patches progress, but this one in particular is going to be a PvE focused open world build that really hones in on a playstyle of 1,000 cuts. Death by 1,000 cuts. And yes, that is the elite specs elite skill name, but this takes that idea and really pushes it into everything that it does. And I think we shall start this off by looking at, of course, the gear. Now for this gear, I'm going with power, precision, vitality, and ferocity. I believe this is Marauders. Yes, it is Marauders. I'm putting a little bit of vitality on this build, not just for survival, but it also does play with certain traits on the Virtuoso. So I'm running with this, and then as for the rune, I currently have pack runes on because this was also my Chronomancer, but you could probably play something a little bit more damage focused. But then as for everything else, it's a little bit of power, vitality, ferocity, power, vitality, ferocity. This one is a little bit more precision to capitalize on that ferocity. And I'm currently sitting at around 55% critical hit chance. But with Fury, because the Virtuoso has strength and fury, this will get me up to around 80% critical chance. Once again, not at 100%, but pretty damn close. Now going to the build, we have illusions, dueling, and Virtuoso. For illusions, I'm taking Shatterstorm. This is once again where we really hone into that idea of death by 1,000 cuts, as many strikes as possible. Your F1 now has 2 charges, which you can get a lot of use out of. Next, I'm taking Phantasmal Haste. Phantasms spawn with quickness, and then you gain quickness upon creating a phantasm. And then finally, for this, Master of Fragmentation. For dueling, I'm taking Phantasmal Fury. Your phantasms have fury, which is actually really good. Blinding Dissipation is Shatter Skill 2 inflicts blindness, so not only will you get confusion and bleeding, but via traits, you'll also gain blindness and cripple. Next, we have Superiority Complex. Critical hit damage against disabled foes or foes below the health threshold is further increased. And there is a lot of potential to disable foes via stuns, dazes, pulls, knockdowns, and in group settings, you'll also gain a lot of use out of this. And then finally for Virtuoso. For this build, I'm taking Blade Turn Refrain. Blade Songs grant Aegis, which is very simple but extremely effective. If Mental Focus was instead prioritizing ranged combat instead of melee, I probably would try this out, but because this trait is situated in such a way, I'm not a huge fan of it by default. Blade Turn Refrain I get a lot more use out of, and also is great for survivability. Next, I'm taking Duelist's Reversal. Blocking or dodging an attack grants boons, this being quickness, fury, and regen. If I'm being honest, I don't think regen needs to necessarily be on here, but I guess it's better than nothing. I was also trying out Phantasmal Blades, but with the Virtuoso, you don't really conjure that many phantasms. And with this build in particular, I don't really conjure a lot of phantasms. So, not my favorite. I think this trait could maybe use a little bit of a buff, actually, because it feels rather limited in what it does. Finally, for my Grandmaster, I'm taking Infinite Forge. Automatically stock blades while in combat. This is on a duration of 3 seconds, which means, once again, generating as many blades to use my shatters as quickly as possible. As for my utilities, I'm taking Twin Blade Restoration, because this is a dual attack with some damage, which is nice to have on a healing skill with a DPS build. Also getting Aegis and some boons as well. Next, we have Rain of Swords. Once again, multiple packets of damage over 5 pulses. Really great. I'm taking Psychic Force as a knockback. This build that I'm going with does prioritize range because I don't have a lot of distance generators or movement speed And while I do have certain traits that allow me to block more, and that is very useful, staying at range oftentimes allows you to gain that upper hand and allow you to freely strike enemies as many times as possible. Finally, I've decided to take Sword of Decimation. Drop a massive blade at a location and you deal even more damage if you strike a disabled foe. I was playing around with I was playing around with Blade Renewal, channel to gain distortion and stock up to the maximum number of blades. I like this and I think it is interesting, but I think it is missing one thing. If this utility skill allowed you to fire off your blade songs, your F1, while you channeled Blade Renewal, this utility skill would be absolutely amazing. If you use this and you have enough blades, you're simply not gaining the second half of this. And what if you use this for a survival situation and it's on a 60-second cooldown? You're going to use the distortion, but you're not going to gain any more blades. Now, if you were able to channel this and use your blades as well, that means if you're at a maximum stacks, but you need to use this, you can use it while also shattering. Finally, we have 1,000 cuts. This is 10 packets of damage in a line on a 60-second cooldown. It's still a little meh. I would like to see this be 2 charges, but we'll have to see how the balance takes this skill. But honestly, I'm having a lot of fun with it. Honestly, with this DPS build, there's not many things that I'm really going for other than damage. Let me use F3 to get rid of that stab. One thing about rotations for your Sword of Decimation is that with a focus, you can put down your temporal, then start casting your 9th ability, and then close it to disable them, gaining even more damage. Sadly, it didn't crit, so I wasn't able to actually get the most out of that damage because I didn't have like Fury uptime and etc, etc. But I really like the dagger because it does prioritize multiple packets of damage and very fast strikes. So if you're fighting someone with Aegis, particularly in PvP or even in a PvE setting, if they happen to have lots of applications of Aegis, you're going to burn through that Aegis very, very fast. And then as you can see with 1,000 cuts, this is even taken to the nth degree. We're going to do that and then into this. Many packets of damage. Now, additionally, with certain traits via Virtuoso, your blades, which are basically all of your dagger skills and also all of your blade songs and also pretty much your psionic abilities, your blades will inflict vulnerability on critical hits. So the more critting that you're doing with these attacks, the more vulnerability you are applying, which not only benefits you, but any allies in the area. But then as for the Dagger Weapon, it's a weapon that I really enjoy. However, I think it could use a little bit of love. I think the second skill, Blade Call, it's great to generate blades. However, if you accidentally use this when you already have 5 blades, you really do lose out on that other aspect. Now, if Blade Call did slightly more damage if you were at maximum blades stocked, that could be interesting. But it is on a very short cooldown, so I'm not like that worried about it. And then as for the third ability, Unstable Blade Storm, I don't love the way that this ability functions. I don't mind the idea of moving abilities. However, this ability not only moves, but has a very slow duration of attack. So it's actually very difficult to get much out of this skill. I genuinely believe that Unstable Blade Storm should just be a ground targeted location that you would pop down and it deals like 3 pulses of damage over 5 seconds or forever how long this Unstable Blade Storm is spawned. I'm not a huge fan because you have to really like aim it and hope that people stay in its path. But then if you're too close to them, you only get like 1 hit of damage on them. If they're too far away, you only get 1 hit of damage. They have to be in like that sweet spot of 300 to 600 range. But this ability has a range of 1200. So I'm not a huge fan of it. Hopefully with balance, they might decide to take a look at it. And I think having that extra control over where that Blade Storm is even better. One thing I do like about this build is fighting multiple packets of enemies. Let's see if we can get some extra enemies together, and it seems like we can. So I'm going, also, I think they changed the elite skill to no longer have a cast time, so you could just like automatically pop it. We're gonna do this, we're gonna pop that, and then we're gonna do this, and then everything. It's kind of hard to explain. I guess I should work on explaining my rotations every now and then, but it really is just a matter of you have to play it and get into that rhythm of the mindset of doing as many packets of damage as possible. Because then you fall into the rhythm of you use your shatter, then you use like your knockback if you need to. You use your second ability to generate more blades. You use your F1, and because if you're Grandmaster, you gain blades very quickly. You pull people together, and then you use your F1 again because you have 2 charges of it. So you can get a lot of vulnerability, you can get a lot of crits out, and it's really awesome. One thing about Virtuoso is that there's also a condition build. I haven't tried the condition build yet, but because everything with the condition build is tied to blades, and all of your abilities usually are blades with this weapon, and also with the utilities and your profession mechanic, you probably get a lot of bleeding out on this build. Now, does that mean I'm a huge fan of it? Not necessarily. I think Virtuoso would be better suited to be a long-ranged sniper power elite spec. Does that mean conditions can never see the light of day on this spec? Not necessarily. It's just, I feel like conditions really have dominated the gameplay of Guild Wars 2 for quite some time. We're gonna knock them back. And even on the return of that second ability for your dagger, you gain even extra damage. So this really is about sustained damage. And I think in group settings, you know, you have certain builds that excel in burst potential with burst windows if your enemy is exposed. But in the case of the Virtuoso, you might actually want a Virtuoso to carry that sustained damage, just in case 1 or 2 people in your group are more burst oriented. So I think there definitely is a place for Virtuoso, and even power. I can definitely see a place for Condi playstyles, because Condi usually is that prolonged damage playstyle, but I find it really interesting that they've kind of taken that mindset but transferred it over to power-based systems. This, everyone, was my Virtuoso build, the Mind Blade. You get a lot of access to blocks as well, which I don't think I really touched too much on, but you gain a lot of boons. This build, I think, would be great for beginners because there's a lot of passive damage going on. You fire out skills, and then they start doing damage over their durations. It's not like you have to be hitting a very precise, a very intricate rotation. This build that I'm running has really allowed me to organically adapt to the flow of combat, to the situation around me, and especially with the traits granting extra boons and defenses. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot more to uncover with the Virtuoso in terms of condition builds, and maybe even more block builds for competitive game modes. But yes, everyone, this was my Virtuoso build. Like the video if you liked it, comment down below your thoughts about the Virtuoso, or comment below what you might like to see me test out for other elite specs. If you would like to support the channel, you can head on over to the Patreon to gain early access to videos, exclusive videos, and also my End of Dragons playthrough is currently going live there. If you would like to order End of Dragons, I have links down below, courtesy of ArenaNet. And if you're interested in VPN services, thank you so much ExpressVPN. We have links below if you're interested in VPN services, which allow you to go incognito, connect to other regions, and overall is a nice convenience. So thank you so much, ExpressVPN. With this said, I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everybody. Mwah.